Well, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. Jiu-Jitsu 2000 here today. I'm back. I hope you're doing fantastic out there. In this video today, we have a Coleman 2-burner propane stove. And this stove works, but it's not running at peak performance. So in the video today, we're going to go through this thing. I've got some basic tools here. I have a small Phillips screwdriver, a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, crescent wrench, channel locks. We're going to go through this and see why it's not running as good as it should be. Looking on the back here, we do have the date stamp 10 of 1994, so that is an October 1994 stove. So let's go ahead and get started. What I'll do first is I'll just open this up. We'll take the grate out and set it to the side. And I want to look at this little regulator first. And the first thing that I'm noticing right off the bat is inside of this regulator, there's chips and cracks on the rubber seal inside. So there you can see a little bit clearer that rubber is not in the best shape. So there might be a little bit of leakage there. I'm not quite sure, but we're going to go ahead and put it on anyway, just to see what this stove is going to do. So we'll just kind of thread this on. I notice in this portion, on this portion, everything looks okay. So we'll just slip that on. Give this a few turns. We're not going to get it super tight. We're going to put on a propane bottle and just test the stove. Make sure these are off. Put the propane on. Now you're going to see that the stove will fire up and it'll have a nice looking flame at first, but as I light the other burner, the flames are just going to go down really low. So let's go ahead and light this bad boy. Use a lighter here. So there's the first burner, and by the looks of that, I mean, the stove is just fine. So if we're using that burner alone, everything's good. Let's try this other one. This one by itself looks okay, got a decent flame, but it's when I add that second burner and I have them both going that they both just kind of die. They don't have much performance out of both burners, so there's a weak flow of propane. Now if you're not needing super high heat, you could totally use this stove and it would work just fine. But in our case, I want this thing to perform at the best that it can, so that's why we're going to get it fixed. You know, again, when you're using just one burner, seems to perform pretty good. So let's go ahead and disconnect the propane now that we've seen what the stove is doing. We'll take off the regulator and we're going to start right off the bat. I'm noticing that these burner rings and stuff are not completely straight. Now, since this thing was just burning, just running, all of this stuff is going to be hot. So let me get a little rag here. We're just going to pull that stuff off and set it right there on that block of wood so I don't burn my desk. Okay, let's go with the second one. Very simple. Let's go ahead and pull that one off, flip it over, put it on that wood as well. That way everything doesn't burn my bench. We'll lift this cover off and we'll look inside and see, is there any grease, is there any dirt? So things don't look too bad. They don't look bad at all. I'll probably blow this out with air, but I want to make sure that these pipes, these channels are completely free. So let's flip this over. Let's take these 2 nuts off the back side and that'll drop those tubes. So we'll be able to blow those out and then we'll put them right back in. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Cool thing about these stoves is they are so well made and they're so easy to work on. I mean, these things are really, really nice. I love these stoves. There we go. Take these little nuts off and I'll just set them over here so I have all my stuff together. Flip this back over, open it up, and now these tubes should fall right out. So from here, I just want to make sure that they have airflow through them. So I'm going to plug these two holes and I'm just going to blow air with my mouth. Got plenty of airflow, so that one's good. Let's check this one and do the same exact thing. We're going to plug those two holes and blow. Plenty of airflow. So we know that these pipes that carry the fuel are good. The next thing we'll do is we'll take off these knobs and we're going to look at these valves. Sometimes these valves get corroded. They put this really silly grease on these valves from the factory, and sometimes that creates problems. So we're actually going to go with that number. I think this is a big number 1 or something. The screws have probably never been out of here. I'm just taking my time because I don't want to strip the head of the screw. And there we go. We got that one just about out. We'll set it over there with those two nuts. That way everything is together. Now we can pull the wheel off. And once the wheel is off, we can take this nut off right here. We're going to do this with both of them valves. Take that little nut off, set the wheel there, and I'm reaching inside the stove and I'm holding on to the valve assembly on the inside. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Take that little guy off, set it over here. Now let's take the wheel off of the second one. We're just going to go through this stove and see if we can get it performing better. That's the cool thing about these things. They're so forgiving. Let's get this nut off. There we go. We'll set the nut over here. And now this whole assembly can come off. So from here, if we want to check these little valves, we can thread them out, and that's where those two O-rings are. And that really nasty grease is sometimes on these O-rings, so make sure that we're cleaning this up and make sure that both of those O-rings are in good condition, as well as the tip of this. We don't want the tip of this damaged or anything like that. So take a close look at that. And those O-rings, I mean, I'm pushing with my thumb and they're still okay. They don't look bad. You can replace them if you want to. So that one don't look bad. Let's take a look at this other one. We'll pull it out. We're going to just wipe off any excess that might be on there. Check the tip. Tip looks okay. O-rings seem to be in fair shape. Anytime you work on the little valves here, on these little threads and these O-rings, I like to use a silicone grease when I put it all back together. That'll help give you nice flame control and stuff like that. Now another thing I want to do is I want to take a look at these two little orifices, these little jets. I just want to make sure that these jets are clear So I'm going to take them off. I'll set them down for just a second and then I'll look at both of them. These are the little jets. If there's any kind of obstruction in there, that'll make the stove not perform as well. So what we'll do is we'll take a light here and we'll just look through, and what we're looking for is light through the jet. And that one looks good, so we know that that jet's okay. And we'll look at the other one, and that one looks okay as well. If you don't have a light, you can use a thin piece of speaker wire or something like that, and that looks okay. Everything so far is looking good. There is a little rubber type gasket right here that piece seals against, so we'll just kind of clean that area up, maybe pull that off. So we'll just inspect that, make sure it's not damaged or broken. And even though this stove is really old, look at the back side of it. The back side of it is in perfect condition. So there's not really any problems with any of this portion of the stove. If you have like a paper towel, you can put like paper towel material inside of here and clean that out, but I'm going to use the air. I'm going to use compressed air, and I'm going to make sure before I use the compressed air, I'm just going to blow. I'm going to plug this hole here on the back, and I'm going to blow here and make sure that this pipe is delivering air to this one. So let's do that. No problem. Let's check this one. We'll plug this and we'll see if we get air out of here. So we don't have any major obstructions as far as I can see in this valve assembly. Everything looks okay so far. Let's check this front portion right here. I don't see any issues. Sometimes that tip right there has a little point on it. It's got like a little cross on it. Sometimes that gets corrosion in it. It gets stuff embedded in there, dirt and stuff, and that will restrict your flow as well. But in our case, looks like we have plenty of flow through there. In fact, I'll take that little Phillips and see if I can maybe clean that. Doesn't seem to be a problem. So everything looks good so far. Yeah, I don't see a problem with this at all. So I'm going to go ahead and put all this back together. We will put the little orifice on there. If you've got your nail polish, it would be good to put it on this jet, but you don't have to. I'm not going to do that today. Normally I would, but I don't have my nail polish handy. And make sure that if you do put nail polish that you don't get it inside of the hole of the jet itself. That would not be good. So we'll just tighten those in. We'll take our silicone grease and we'll just put a little bit on these valves here. Don't need much. So I have just a little bit on there. We'll just stick that bad boy in and we'll tighten this down. That'll give us nice flame control. Do the same thing with this one. Let's just apply just a tad bit. You don't need a lot. Just like that, just a tiny bit. In fact, that's probably way too much, but it's not going to hurt anything. Silicone-based lubricants are good for this type of application. So we'll set that there. From here, we can go ahead and start putting this valve assembly and all that back together. Let's put that like so. Remember, we have those two brass nuts that will go inside and they'll start threading into that valve. And get that all threaded on. Nice and snug, but don't over tighten it. Okay, while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and blow this out with some air. So it might get noisy here for a second. I was blowing that with air, I noticed that there was some spider webs and stuff that came out of the small tube. So that was actually kind of good that I saw that those spider webs came out, because it was a small obstruction, not a bad one. But now you can see I put these gas tubes back in. I'm going to just thread these nuts back on the back side. Do these one at a time. Make sure that they're down in the hole and that you got them on the valve on the inside there. Put these little nuts on, and these nuts are kind of flimsy, but they do work. So that's what that looks like on the inside. Hopefully you can see that in there. I got the gas tubes installed. Now we'll just snug them up a little bit. They don't have to be gorilla tight, just snug them up. If you try to go too crazy, you can easily strip out those little nuts. See, that's what came out of that tube. That stuff there. So everything looks good there. Now we got our burner rings. We have 2 sets of them, and now we're going to make sure that we have a corrugated, a flat, a corrugated, a flat, corrugated, flat, corrugated, and then the top. So that one looks good. We're going to check this one and for the same. So we have a corrugated, flat, corrugated, flat, corrugated, flat, corrugated, and then the top. So those rings look good. When they had these on, they were kind of sideways. They kind of look like that or something. Now I'm exaggerating, but that's kind of what they look like. So when I put these back on, I want to make sure that I get these as straight as possible. That'll help make everything a little bit better. So before I can do that though, I got to put this piece in, and this isn't really too dirty or anything, so shouldn't be much cleaning involved. Now if you got grease and stuff on there, this would be a good time to clean it, obviously, while you have it out. But in our case, we kind of lucked out. The stove is fairly clean. So we'll just set those down. And again, like I mentioned just a second ago, as you drop these in, try to make sure that these burner rings are as straight as possible. Try to get everything nice and straight, and then just drop it in. And that little screw will find where it needs to go. Then we'll have a well placed burner with no rings messed up. Everything will be nice and straight. I'm going to repeat the same thing here. Find the threads, and let me just straighten these up just a little bit more. There we go, nice and straight. Go ahead and tighten her down. There, that looks good. So our burners are in. Now we can put most of our tools away. We are going to put the valves, these wheels back on, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that off puts this line straight up and down, this line right here. So I'm going to kind of turn it until I get it in the off position, and then I'll line that up. So from here, we'll put that screw in. Make sure the valve feels good and the off is in the up position. Now if off isn't in the up position completely, that's okay. It's not really that big of a deal. I just try to be as close to it as possible. Okay, let's fill that. Yeah, those feel good. Those feel real good. So we'll keep our lighter close. Now when it comes to the regulator, I'm going to go ahead and replace this regulator. This is an old stove. This one does still work, but sometimes, you know, like those cracks in there that I showed you earlier, and inside the center right here right there inside the center, that little filter sometimes gets clogged with dust and dirt and sand and stuff. So I think that's gonna reduce the flow of propane. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace it. 5430 Regulator. You can buy these all over the place. These are cheap too, they're not that expensive. So this will help clean everything up and it'll give me better flow. I'll still hang on to the old one because the old one's not completely bad, but it's just not running as great. So we have a brand new rubber gasket and a brand new filter, and everything is new. So now we'll go ahead and install this new one, this regulator. And like I said, I'll hang on to the old one. It's not completely bad, but I will keep it. Make sure these are off. Put the propane on. There we go. Now let's go ahead and fire this up. We'll start with this burner and we'll see what happens here. There's that burner. How's that look? Yeah, it looks like it's doing good there. Plenty of flame control too, I noticed. That last one didn't have much flame control, but because we cleaned the little valves and put the silicone on there, it gave us a lot more flame control. Now let's fire up this second burner. Remember, this is where the stove was struggling, was trying to run them both. And now, look at that. Both burners are running great. That is fantastic. I like that. We're gonna check the flame control. Looks like we have a good stove on our hands, ready for the next who knows how many years. It's always good to have an extra regulator on hand if you have a propane stove. They don't cost that much, and it's a good insurance policy to have for these little propane stoves. So now I'm going to set up for a boil test. Okay, boil test time. Let's start with this far side burner. Fire that bad boy up. We have my little pot here, 2-liter pot, and I have 32 ounces of room temperature water. 32 ounces. We're going to set this on. Let's get this fired up. Get it nice and hot. Now we'll start our timer and we'll see how long it takes us to bring 32 ounces of water to a boil. Absolutely fantastic as far as I'm concerned. 4.5 minutes to boil some water, 1 liter, not bad. Checking the flame control now. Flame control works really nice. Yeah, you can bring it right down to a simmer. So really, that's all there is to these stoves. Just turn that valve off when you're done and call it a day. Well folks, that's all there is to this video. 4.5 minutes to boil 1 liter of water. When I'm not even all the way on, I'm like running about 3/4 throttle. That's impressive. I like the way this stove works. Easy to work on. So if you find these at a garage sale or anything like that, they're in a lot of cases, they're not hard to work on. So pretty simple little pieces of equipment that will last you probably your lifetime. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to leave comments down below. Like this video. Share this video, and until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a beautiful day. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.